Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 79. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation, and thanks for being patient. Dave and I are recording this later than usual on Wednesday because of the Art Rooney press conference at noon. We'll, of course, recap that, and it's a good thing we waited because we have our first two names of the Pittsburgh Steelers head coaching search in the post-Mike Tomlin era, basically 24 hours after Tomlin told the team he was stepping down. After 19 years, we know two names that could potentially replace him. So, Dave, how you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm like that little girl in that animated GIF meme. I'm so excited, rubbing her hands together like that. So yeah, picture me as a little girl rubbing my hands together.
I will do no such thing.
As being so excited there. Yeah, getting past obviously. Busy, crazy day, obviously, on Tuesday with the Mike Tomlin news, and that kept us very, very active for most of the day. And then we got word that Art Rooney II will be holding a press conference earlier today. We decided to wait a little bit to make sure we covered that. That ended up being 15 minutes, so we got plenty to cover there. We've got, sounds like a couple of future signings might be made official later today. As you mentioned, we've got two members of the Rams coaching staff being requested to be interviewed in Nate Schillhouse and Chris Shula. Two names I believe that we've already mentioned on podcasts previously there. So where would you like to start on this Wednesday? Happy Wednesday, by the way.
Happy Wednesday, Dave. We'll talk about Shula and Schillhouse here in a moment, but let's begin with Art Rooney II, who spoke with the media at noon. It was a fairly brief press conference, about 15, 18 minutes, just not telling us anything earth-shattering, but kind of giving a lay of the land, recapping how Pittsburgh got here, now looking for a new head coach and how the team will find its next. And I think a couple things off the top, the big takeaways, Rooney confirming that Rooney and general manager Omar Khan will lead the search. We'll also invite input from others. I assume Andy White will have some sort of influence in this process, but it's going to be decided between Rooney and Khan. Internally, no candidates, and so anyone fearful of a promotion of Arthur Smith or somebody like that, you are safe. It should be an outside hire, and that's not a big shock. Pittsburgh, even in their very rare head coach hires, have rarely ever gone in-house and nothing in the last 50, 60 years. So those were kind of the two big things off the top, that Rooney and Khan will be in charge, will spearhead this thing, and it's almost guaranteed to be an outside hire.
Yeah, I like it. I like what I'm hearing so far, as far as that part of the recap there. And Arthur Smith, we could go ahead and throw in the fact that he's interviewing with the Titans, I believe, today, and then the Arizona Cardinals put in a request for him. And as far as any coaches under contract on the staff right now, whether or not they remain on the staff moving forward will obviously have a lot to do with who the head coach is and whether that will be addressed at a later time, obviously, and after they hire the new head coach. And I believe Art Rooney II also said that the hiring process is likely to take a couple of weeks. At the latest, I believe he said he would like to have the head coach hired before the combine. Not sure whether or not they will get it done before the Senior Bowl at the end of this month. I still imagine, obviously, Andy Weidel and all the scouts and Omar Khan and all the people, if they don't, it's not a huge deal. It's going to be weird not covering Mike Tomlin front and center down there at the Senior Bowl practices there. And Art Rooney expects it to take a couple of weeks and kind of go from there. So it sounds like they're going to be have at least an open mind, open book. Art Rooney II was asked, and it was a good question. I threw it out there on Twitter, hoping it would get along the lines as well too. The three previous head coaches, obviously Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin, all defensive-sided background, coaches prior to being hired by the Steelers. It does make you wonder if Art Rooney will say, you know what, that's not broke. Let's not fix it. And in so many words, be hyper focused on maybe a defensive side of the ball coach. We'll see how this thing ultimately plays out. And obviously, it looks like one of the candidates early on is offensive side of the ball coach in Shieldhouse there. So that is at least a positive as well too. So what else from Art Rooney, and what did I miss?
Yeah, Rooney did say they're going to keep an open mind and quote be an open book when it comes to their search, and not going to limit themselves to one side of the ball or one archetype, so to speak. But the history, although it is only means so much, each hire, each process is different, but would lend itself to a young coach at the very least, and potentially one with a defensive background, which is what Chris Shula of the Rams has. From the Mike Tomlin side of things, Rooney discussing this, that he was not shocked by Tomlin's decision, but was not expecting Tomlin to talk to him and announce his resignation from the team. Said it was about a 15, 20-minute conversation they had. Rooney did not try to convince Tomlin to stay. He also confirmed that had Tomlin intended to coach in 2026, Rooney was willing to do that, essentially saying he had no intention on firing Mike Tomlin, which is jives with reporting and kind of what you and I had been thinking. So that's the book on Tomlin. Rooney saying that this was more about Tomlin wanting to spend time with family, and basically in so many words saying that he was tired and wanted to take a break and get back to his personal life.
Yeah, and if indeed that's the case, I think you could roll out TV, although I don't think it would obviously consume him the way a head coach job obviously would. And wasn't Calvin Austin on with Jerry Dulac last night, and didn't he say something along the lines that he would be surprised if Mike Tomlin went into the TV broadcasting side? And then on top of it, we've referenced several times over the last few weeks about that interview that Mike Tomlin had with Rich Eisen on the Rich Eisen show about 18 months or so ago. And at the time, at least, it sounded like Mike Tomlin had no interest in the broadcast television side. Money can change things. Boredom obviously can change things, but at least for right now, it sounds like Mike Tomlin's gonna sit everything out for 2026 at the very least.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm still not going to rule out television. Like you said, a lot less demanding, especially if it's a studio job where there's prep time, but, one day a week, basically on game day, you might, be in location, although would that require a move? And do they want to move? Those are all, conversations down the road and for the Tomlin family to have. Rooney did say that his indication from Tomlin in that conversation was that Tomlin would not coach in 2026, and a lot of questions still about rights and trading. And frankly, Dave, I don't think anyone really understands or knows exactly how this will work, even if Tomlin does sit out all of 2026 and we're in January of 2027 and he gets the bug to coach again. I don't know parameters in terms of trade compensation and rights. There's been a lot of mixed reporting on that. And then at one point, Mike Florio today saying basically it just comes down to what the language in the contract says, which no duh, but we don't know what that language is. And so that'll be a conversation for next year, but I don't think anyone really knows how that process will work. But Rooney addressing it and saying that if that time comes, then we'll address it then.
Right, and he would not get into actual contract talk or even whether or not he had decided whether or not to pick up, I guess, the option year for Mike Tomlin. He didn't, he did, and for obvious reasons, he didn't want to address any of that. I've reached out to Joel Corey, waiting to hear back from him today, because I think one of the stumbling blocks here is, does anything toll here potentially? Let's just say that 2026 was the year in question and the Steelers own that rights. If you got past 2026, does that do the Steelers no longer have rights, or does it toll at that point? And then there's the whole, Tomlin, the option year in 2027, how does that play into that as well too? So a lot of people have a lot of opinions of what they think all of this means. none of the above have really firmed up my confidence to say that's the way that this is actually going to work out. If anybody would probably know, it would be Joel Corey. So I will let you and everybody else know what Joel Corey has to say on the matter. But for now, at least in 2026, I can pretty much. I feel confident in saying that if Mike Tomlin wanted to coach in 2026, that a team would have to work out some sort of a trade with the Steelers for his rights, so to speak. There, so but it doesn't sound like that's going to be an option for 2026 anyway. So it gives us plenty of time to track down the correct answer, I suppose.
Right. So to be continued on that whole conversation and probably not for another year. Thought it was really interesting from Rooney, very much pushing back on the idea that Pittsburgh is a franchise in transition that requires a rebuild. He says he flat out said he does not like the word rebuild and wants to compete. And I want to find the exact quote here, but essentially saying, I don't like wasting years kind of toiling away and trying to rebuild this thing. He says, quote, I'm not sure why you waste a year of your life not trying to contend. Obviously, your roster is what it is every year, changes every year, and so you deal with what you have every year and try to put yourself in position to compete every year. And sometimes you have the horses, sometimes you don't, but I think you try every year. I'm not going to say we're going to take a couple years to figure this out and then we'll try to compete. I think you try every year, end quote. And also in his opening remarks, really touted Tomlin for competing and being in it every single season, which I think is very important to Rooney, that despite Pittsburgh's stagnation, Rooney liked that they were in the fight, in the hunt, and there were no years where it's early December and the season feels essentially over. And so I think Rooney making it very clear he intends to, as the phrase goes, reload, not rebuild.
Right. And along those lines, within that, he doesn't want, you don't want to have a built-in excuse or say, well, before you even hire a head coach, we're okay with going backwards before going forwards, and that's the right answer to give, obviously.
But I think he means it because the way he
Yeah.
talked about it, it seemed very sincere.
Right. So, and look, I mean, they still obviously got some pedigree people under contract here now. Moves and all in direction. They go, and obviously Omar Khan and Andy Weidel, I'm sure are already hard at work at mapping out maybe a free agency strategy. None of that. Will obviously be put into effect until a new head coach is obviously hired, and they get the game plan and direction that coach and the type of players that coach might think that he needs to win with going forward here. But I think all of that was answered rightly and meaningful when it comes to Rooney.
Is that the right approach, though? Because some will say, tear it down to the studs, trade a bunch of older assets, collect a lot of picks, and then take two years or so, kind of suck, and then bounce back if you hit on your capital and find your quarterback and all of that. Is that the right approach, or is it Rooney's approach of, let's just keep putting our foot down on the gas pedal?
Well, look what's happened in Jacksonville, right? You can make a head coach change it come right out of the chute. So people are going to say that and see that and say, how many major changes did Jacksonville actually have? But we'd have to go back and look at them, right?
Sure.
But
Well, the difference they would say is they have Trevor Lawrence, and who's the Trevor Lawrence in Pittsburgh right now? There is not a Trevor Lawrence.
Sure. And there's not going to be an Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh probably either, right? According to Rooney.
Right. Obvious as it is, Rooney was asked about because of Tomlin's departure, does that impact Rodgers' decision? And Rooney flat out said, yes, it likely does affect it that Rodgers came to Pittsburgh for Tomlin. That's well documented. Rodgers has said that 1,000 times throughout the offseason, during the season, the press conference on Monday after the wild card loss. And so you would expect if Rodgers plays in 2026, which is certainly no sure thing, it will not be as a Pittsburgh Steeler.
I'll answer your question to me with a question. When you don't have a franchise quarterback, isn't it essentially a rebuild anyway to some degree?
Well, Pittsburgh has been bucking that trend by having their head above water and playing competitive wild card seasons, because most teams that go through that transition, whether you got a bunch of examples, the Colts post Peyton Manning, the Patriots post Tom Brady, the Panthers post Cam Newton. You get the idea. Usually those teams just fall off a cliff, and it naturally puts yourself in that reset, rebuild position, and hopefully finding that future franchise quarterback. The Patriots with Drake May, the Colts with Andrew Luck, etc. So Pittsburgh has not been in that position because they've had the buoyancy negated by Tomlin to be competitive when most teams simply aren't.
Just got a message back from Joel Corey, short and sweet. I think through 2027 as far as length of the rights.
Okay, so based on that, if Tomlin wanted to become a head coach this time next year, Pittsburgh would still have his rights and still be able to trade him. We don't know exactly when his contract would expire after the 2026 season into 2027, but presumably it runs longer than January. It may run through June. It may run through the new league year. We're not 100% sure. So that is some clarity, hopefully.
All right, so that's all I got. One sentence answer there, but that's we'll have to just move forward to that. And I don't think we're going to have to worry about that in 2026. So we got more time to kind of dig down deeper in that. Look, do either of us expect this team with a new head coach and technically no franchise quarterback at this point, or not even a veteran one on the horizon, that we think they could try to redo what they've done, through it started obviously with Trubisky, and then you obviously drafted Pickett, and then Fields, and then Russell Wilson, and then Aaron Rodgers. Barring them going out and trying another kind of top tier or more established veteran or former first round pick, however you want to call it, are either of us expecting this team to compete for a Super Bowl in 2026 right now?
No, but can you get over that playoff hump is the first and foremost question before you even get to Super Bowl talk. I mean, my frustration with quarterback, outside of the obvious of not having a long-term franchise guys, you've had this revolving door. You're going to have 6 different week 1 quarterbacks in 6 straight years. I've always said it is so hard to build anything and take steps forward as a franchise when you're playing this revolving door at quarterback. It's why I was still at least open to the idea of Aaron Rodgers returning in 2026, at least until the news of Mike Tomlin's resignation, which really takes that possibility out and gone forever. So you're going to have 6 different quarterbacks in 6 years. Will it be 7 and 7? Because it does not appear there's going to be a franchise quarterback hanging around, but not even a franchise quarterback, just somebody that can get some continuity with the coaching staff, with the team, and to have a second year where you can kind of learn from year one and build upon something. If you can't do that, I think it's just really hard to win. I don't know any other team in the NFL that's doing this kind of revolving door at quarterback, not even with franchise quarterbacks, but just kind of maybe middle tier type of quarterbacks. At least they can have that continuity and have the benefit of that. Pittsburgh is just this changing the socks each year. And it's no surprise that they can't move forward as a franchise when you're consistently changing your quarterback.
Agreed. I agree. And that's going to be one of the big things over the next year or two, is trying to at least get that guy that you can build around for the next several years at such an important position.
Right. And we may mention this mid-podcast. Oregon's Dante Moore is supposed to be announcing his draft status, either returning to Oregon or entering the 26 NFL draft. That's going to happen a minute from now, at least according to the report. And so today is deadline day for underclassmen to declare. We know that Ty Simpson's in it. Mendoza, I believe, is either a senior or already declared. He's going to be in the draft. But Chambliss is a whole other situation. I don't even know what's going on there. So we'll see if Dante Moore joins the fold.
All right. What did you think about one of the questions I was hoping to get answered today, and I'm surprised he answered it, was about, had Mike Tomlin decided to, to say that he was stepping down, was this team prepared to move forward with him as a head coach? And Art Rooney said they were ready to run it back in 2026. What do you think about that?
I'm not surprised by it. That, like I said earlier, meshes with the reporting and our own personal feelings that Rooney did not want to fire Tomlin, eat that money, that he probably saw the value of the team winning the AFC North and keeping the locker room and being competitive, which Rooney again touted this team was in it in the sense of competing for a playoff spot in the division, every single year, including, of course, taking the crown this season. I think the Dublin win in Ireland was huge for the morale of an owner, right or wrong. Rooney badly wanted to win that game, what it meant for him, for the franchise, for the family, for the Rooney name. You win the division, you beat Baltimore Week 18. That all told me that Tomlin was going to come back if he wanted to come back.
Does that mean that if there was a pretty decent chance, and we heard that there was a possibility of the, in other words, were we set for another Aaron Rodgers, Mike Tomlin, maybe farewell tour?
Well, we'll never know. Obviously, I don't know what Rodgers' decision would have been. Obviously, if Tomlin returned, then Rodgers' chances of remaining a Steeler would have increased significantly, but he could have retired. There still would have been, I think, an open question of would he go to Minnesota and Kevin O'Connell. I think had Tomlin returned, it was going to be either run it back with Pittsburgh or retire for Rodgers would be my guess of it all, but I don't know if he would have played or not.
All right. What else needs to be hit here? Does that? Are you glad? How do you feel? Dante Moore's on my screen right now, so I don't know what he's saying right now.
I'm sure they'll put the graphic up, or Twitter will tell you
All right.
in a second. What were you going to say?
Are you knowing that might have been the road that they went down? You know, are you glad to Are you glad that now that you don't have to go through that?
Do the Rodgers will he, won't he?
Through the Rodgers and Tomlin potentially another year.
No, I was open to the idea. I'm not sitting there saying I'm glad that door is now shut, or at least we assume it's shut. I'm glad in the sense we won't have to play the will he, won't he game on Rodgers for potentially God knows how long, because that was very tiring last year. So that's one benefit. But again, I saw the benefit of running it back, and I thought Rodgers played well and better than expectation and was not a root problem for this offense and why Pittsburgh was unable to get over the hump. And again, I really value being able to build something with a quarterback in back-to-back years. You know, Rodgers talked about his second year with LaFleur. He won MVP after a first year where he felt like he was game managing. Second year, he was impacting the game with real positive plays. And so I could see, not that Rodgers was going to be MVP in Pittsburgh, obviously, but again, there's value in being able to build with your quarterback, and Pittsburgh will be starting anew, we assume, in 26.
All right, breaking news. Oregon quarterback Dante Moore has decided to return to school for the 2026 season. He told ESPN Sports Center, foregoing a chance to be a top pick in the 2026 NFL draft. He'll project near the top of a loaded quarterback class in 2027.
What is that supposed to be?
I don't know. Maybe it's more Morse code than
Yeah. It's like the Sports Center.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or more than my breaking news sound.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm all giddy today, aren't I?
It's a brand new world over here. It's a brand new day. Yeah, that you're the first to tell me that news. I was going to let you break the news to me, so that'll be more ammunition to the wait for 27 crowd that on paper looks impressive, but looks can be deceiving, and I'm always careful of, you know, I think everyone talks about the draft class 2 years away always looks perfect, and sometimes it changes dramatically, but that certainly makes a pretty shallow 2026 class even more so. You got Mendoza, Ty Simpson. It's questionable if he's even a first-round guy. He'll be in that conversation. Chambliss' situation, still to my knowledge, is unknown, and those kind of seem to be the guys. Maybe somebody else will emerge. We're not talking about too much right now, but the option seems slim.
Boy, remember all that conversation that we got prior to the season, and people saying how we're going to watch all these quarterbacks and all the names we rattled off, and we said, hey, if you got a YouTube TV subscription, make sure you record all these games. There are a lot of guys to have to watch, and you know, several of those guys were touted as first round guys, and here we are. Here we are right now, basically. It's Mendoza, right?
Right, and that's not somebody that was considered even part of that 26
Right.
class, you know, a year ago. He was getting some attention transferring from Cal, but it was a lot of the Garrett Nussmeyers and Klubniks and Drew Allers and Wood Arch DeClaire and all that kind of stuff. And it was, oh my goodness, the Browns have 2 first-round picks and the Rams have 2 first-round picks. How can Pittsburgh ever compete? Well, there really is no competition because there aren't many quarterbacks to compete for, it seems like. But again, I think Ty Simpson is going to be the name to talk about throughout this draft season. That potential mid-first round pick where Pittsburgh is slotted at number 21. Will Pittsburgh like him? Will they not? We have no idea. I don't even know my own personal feelings on Ty Simpson yet, if I'm in or if I'm out, but that'll be a name to watch. And then Chambliss as well, if he cannot go back to the NCAA for his 6th and final season.
Well, we're hitting on all the breaking news. You ready for some more?
Hit me.
The Steelers have submitted an interview request for Dolphins defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver per Diana
All right.
Rossini of The Athletic. So,
Make it 3.
man, there we got put another one up on the board right there for us to dive deeper into. All right, where were we? Back to losing track. So much breaking news coming in. Twitter machine going crazy here. Where are we at in the whole Rooney discussion? More of that.
Well, I'm glad we waited to do the podcast today. It was a really smart move. That was basically it for Rooney. I think there wasn't a whole lot more ground to cover that we didn't already talk about. To me, just getting clarification on who's leading the search. So it does not sound like Daniel Martin Rooney, who we believe is the successor to Art, is going to be spearheading this. Will he have any sort of involvement? We'll see. But it's going to be Art and Khan. How, you may remember this better than I do, Dave. How involved was Art in the 07 search? I know that was still a lot of Dan Rooney, the late Dan Rooney, spearheading that. But how integral was Art in the process?
Yeah, I don't have a great recollection of that. As we talked about the other day, man, you were caught in between Mason. You didn't have the breaking Twitter and every bit of news out there at the time, and someone sneezes, you hear about it type thing. So I don't remember a lot about that. Obviously, Dan Rooney highly involved in that, but as far as the level of Art being involved in that, I mean, I can't recall anything related to how much or how little he was involved in that. Maybe we can go back and research some of the old on newspapers.com or something like that, and maybe dig, but I don't have that off the top of my head.
I know that Art II introduced Tomlin in his press conference after the hire was made. Dan Rooney was in the room. I believe Dan spoke with the media sort of unplanned, either right thereafter or sometime after the hire was made, but I'm just not 100% sure what that process was like. I just ask that to say, is this kind of newish territory for Rooney having to go through the process of hiring a coach? I know even if he did have involvement in 07, so much has changed since then. It is, every process is unique to itself. And it's been a while since Pittsburgh has gone down this road, but I just kind of wonder if he could draw on any of that 07 process to help him today.
Yeah. Once again, I do kind of, my biggest fear, and unfortunately, well, we already got 2 DCs out there, Shula being one of them, and Anthony Weaver being the other. I just hope they don't just look at it and say, well, the last 3 were defensive coordinators. We'll follow all the rules and cast a wide net, but we'd really, really like to lean towards a defensive coordinator because it's worked before, That's really my only fear. And then also, I really, and I said this the other day, I really hope they go young and innovative and more unknown than.
Well, isn't that kind of doing the same old, because they've been going with young and unknown in the previous hires too?
Well, right. But I mean, as far as the side of the ball scares me more so than the youth.
I think we get too caught up in the side of the ball. I mean, I get the overall point, and everyone has a perspective. Everyone has a side. Tomlin, defensive guy, you kind of lean on that some, but the job is so much more than just fixing an offense or a defense. Sure. We've seen so many great coordinators and smart guys on one side of the football fail as a head coach because the job is a leadership one. It's delegation. It's organization. It's, you're handling everything. And
Right. But let me interrupt you here. I'm just saying, I just don't want them to just pigeonhole that as far as the side of the football.
Yeah, I don't think they are. I mean, they're bringing in Shieldhouse, and Rooney talked about casting a wide net. I'm sure they're going to bring in some offensive guys. They're going to probably.
I have no issue with it being I have no issue with it being a special teams coordinator. For all that matter. Or even a guy, a passing coordinator like Shieldhouse is and all like that. I just don't want them to go in with the foregone conclusion of it's got to, we're doing all this, but our main goal is to focus on one side of the ball.
Are you concerned that could happen? And if so, how could we identify and feel that?
Oh, I mean, we're not really going to know.
Right.
Art's not going to come out and say, all along I wanted a defensive defensive. Now he did obviously, throw out the caveat of would I like to get another, and he was using that loosely as far as the past three. Yeah, I'd like to get another one like Noel, Cowher, and Tomlin because of the success that they had.
Right.
He wasn't just saying, well, we had great luck because all three of those guys. Yeah, he didn't quantify it, and I it's just a personal that I just hope that they don't go in there saying, and I hope it doesn't come down to, well, this one's offensive side of the ball, this one's defensive side of the ball. Let's go with the defensive guy.
I mean, I
Eh,
think the Tomlin hire proved this team can have a very open mind because Tomlin came out of nowhere and they pivoted to him when that was probably unpopular, unexpected, and was a real risk for a franchise that had just won a Super Bowl 2 years prior to take a chance on this unknown 1 year DC. So I'd like to give them a little bit of grace and benefit of the doubt and say that they're going to have an open mind in this search.
And look, what's becoming a big topic of conversation on social media, at least right now, is do you would you rather have an offensive minded coach hire a defensive coordinator as your new head coach, or would you rather have a defensive coordinator or a defensive minded coach? Which do you trust more?
Well, the point that some make is that you want to hire an offensive-minded head coach because if you hire a defensive-minded guy and he hires an OC, and even if he crushes the OC hire, that guy's going to then get poached and become a head coach somewhere, and you have to go find an OC again. Look at Tampa Bay as one example. They have Liam Cohen as their OC. He gets poached by Jacksonville. They replace him with what was it, Grizzard, and he's a mess, and Tampa Bay season goes belly up. I get the instinct on that, but again, I think it's just asking the wrong question. You're thinking 4 steps down the road, and so are we getting the right guy to lead this team? Nothing else matters if you don't get the right head coach to lead the collective, not just one side of the ball or the 4D chess of OC, DC, and who's going to get poached 2 years from now. And just you can twist yourself into pretzels and be frozen by all that stuff that doesn't matter for the here and now. So you got to get the right coach, the right leader. Pittsburgh is, what made Cowher and Tomlin and Noel successful wasn't just their expertise about defense. It was their ability to lead and connect and inspire. And certainly it is part of, you want a good football mind and somebody, part of leadership and connecting is being a smart guy that players respect and trust and believe in. That's all part of the job. But, I think there's so much more to the job. And I know that you understand this, but it's kind of my soapbox to get on is that the job is so much more than just offense and defense. That is a coordinator role. Head coach is everything.
Let's see. Among the players, let's see. Oh no, that's not Ramsey. Art Rooney II on what traits, characteristics are important to this organization when looking for a new head coach. He says, I think there are a lot of things that go into being a successful head coach. Number one, really, I think in my mind, is leadership. And really trusting that this person can stand up in front of your team day in and day out and hold their attention and have them motivated to do what they do. So that's the most important. So Art Rooney was just talking directly to you there, right?
Yes, I was in the back of that room asking that question. You guys just couldn't see me. When you have Mike Tomlin and his ability to connect and not lose this locker room for 19 years, you certainly understand the value of that. And you see a bunch of other teams where they collapse and players tune out. And even in Baltimore, it seems like things got maybe a bit rough internally. The Ravens certainly feel like they were done with Harbaugh. The owner seemed pretty emphatic about that yesterday. So you want to just
What do you think about him, real quick? Is he
Well, I can
like
see
Ursay? Does a little bit of Ursay in him?
I can see why he barely ever speaks to the media because he's a pretty candid, open type of dude that'll give you a direct answer. So I imagine Baltimore's like, let's just make sure that you never speak to the media because you kind of make some waves when you do talk. It's like his first presser, I think, in maybe 4 years. Somebody said it's been a long time. So it was entertaining. It was fun to watch as a spectator. I don't know how Baltimore internally feels about it, but that's the owner.
I get the and obviously I've heard him speak before, but this one really set off at the with Jim Irsay just passing kind of vibes, you know.
Not to make this Ravens deep, but what is Bisciotti's background? Where's he come from? He's a business guy?
I don't know if I've gone down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, it looks like he's owned a bunch of companies or something or other. So intriguing guy for sure.
All right, back to I keep trying to get us off track and unsuccessful at that. Art Rooney on if fan reaction or negativity may have influenced Mike Tomlin's decision to step down as head coach. He says, I'll leave it to him to explain to you someday what all went into his decision. I think that in my mind, in the discussion we had, it was probably more of a family-related decision than a football-related decision. But as I say, I don't want to speak for Mike on that.
I thought Jeremy Fowler had some pretty revealing comments. I'm going to try to pull up here. I'm trying to find exactly where it's at, and I don't know where it's at on our website right now because we got a whole lot of Rooney content. I just pulled up the article, and this is, I assume, talking to players that attended the meeting. We've heard Kevin Austin and Jonnu Smith speak briefly about the meeting and what took place there, and Tomlin received a standing ovation and shook each player's hand as they were leaving the meeting room, and Jonnu Smith called it the most emotional meeting he's ever been in 9 years in the NFL. But I thought Fowler had some interesting comments, and this is kind of summing up apparently what Tomlin had to say to the team. Fowler says, quote, someone has to move the franchise forward that I couldn't deliver for you anymore. He kind of put it on himself, not getting it done. That being said, I know for a while Tomlin had been thinking about stepping away. I don't think it was a situation where it was a mandate that he leave or anything. But in the meeting with the team, he did say, hey, look, this is sort of a Game of Thrones style business. It's cutthroat. And if you don't get it done, you don't get it done. And I didn't get it done for you. He recognized to the team that renewed optimism was needed for the franchise and that he was not delivering that anymore, end quote. And so I kind of talked about yesterday that Tomlin probably felt the weight of a franchise that could not go in any direction. It was 3 straight seasons of 10-7, 2 of those seasons, one and done in the wild card round and 7 straight playoff losses, no AFC title game since 2016. And I'm sure that weighed on Tomlin. And he's tried every avenue possible to go in a different direction, whether you're going rookie quarterbacks, you're going veteran quarterbacks, stay from veteran quarterbacks, making big trades, going through the draft, rebuilding the trenches. I mean, they've done just about everything that you can do. New OC hires, new coaching staff. They've done about everything you can do as a franchise to try to get unstuck. And they just seem to, it's like quicksand. The more you fight, the more you sink. And I think it's what Tomlin was in. He just said, I've done all I can try to do. It's not working. Let someone else do it.
And then that with the, it's a different world than 2007, and it's a different world than even 5 years ago when it comes to social media now. And Mike Tomlin has mentioned several times about it being an entertainment business. And look, every word is hung on and parsed. We do it. We're as guilty as we have the tools and the ability to analyze everything and overthink, and then the millions of talk shows and podcasts out there. By the way, when does first episode of the Mike Tomlin podcast drop?
Hey.
At this point, what I'm getting at here is, and look, there was going to, if Mike Tomlin remained the head coach of this team, moving forward, all the talk, it was going to be just same old talk. It's going to be 2016. It's going to be the 5 or the 7 game losing streak in the playoffs is going to be 5 by double digits. I mean, he was going to have to live under that constantly all off season, and probably more at this point. Obviously coming out of, look, I mean, people have been saying fire Tomlin for years, but for it to reach the kind of the Matt Canada level, if you will, at Acrisure earlier in the season and all. I mean, it's what I'm getting at. It's a different world, and he's probably a part of what you said as well too. He's thrown every bit of type of mud at that he could up against this wall, and he gets to the winning record part, and most of the time he's been getting to the playoffs, but obviously can't kick that final door in to get that playoff win.
And I'll try to share this portion of the interview later today. I'm sure you've seen it, Dave. I'm sure others have as well. Whenever Tomlin spoke with Rich Eisen on the Wednesday after Week 18, he just looked very tired, which granted most coaches do this time of year. But he had made a comment that he was tired and that he had been kind of holed up in this dark room all morning. And Eisen was the first person he had spoken to basically all day long. And that's the life of a head coach. It's not unique to Tomlin, but it is demanding, and he's done this thing for 19 years, longer than, well, Andy Reid's been doing it longer, but longer with one team than anyone else in the NFL. And so I think that kind of moment in hindsight makes you think, well, this guy's pretty tired. You're away from your family, you're late mornings or early mornings, late nights, and eventually you may want something different.
Let's see. Rooney was asked about, do you foresee this maybe being a roster reset that will get younger because of what has happened? I think it's too early to say what effect it's going to have on our roster. The new coach is obviously is going to have a lot of say in that. We'll have the discussions when that time comes. He also asked about 3-4 defense and
What did he
quite
say on that, by the way? He didn't really give much of an answer, I don't
yeah,
think.
he says, "Well, I think part of the discussion with candidates will be our roster and how they view our roster, what they would do with our roster, and making sure we're all comfortable with that plan."
Right. So leaving it open ended, but maybe hinting that the new head coach is not going to get to completely overhaul the structure of the team and the scheme, at least as it presently exists with the older players.
And then he was the final thing. And I think we pretty much covered every damn bit of it at this point. It was 15 minutes long. I don't. He was asked about player personnel. Will a new coach have as much say in player personnel? What will the dynamics or the chain of command, will that shift a little bit with how long Omar Khan has been in his role now? Art Rooney II said, "I don't think I anticipate really changing our structure or chain of command. I expect a new head coach like Bill Cowher, like Mike Tomlin, like Chuck Noll will be very involved in preparing for the draft and working closely with Omar and his staff, making sure we're ready."
You do wonder if a new head coach is going to have quite the power that Tomlin did for his reputation, his status, his time in Pittsburgh, his contract. So it's hard to think they'll have the exact same sway. I'm sure in structure it's going to be the same in terms of reporting system and the process, but you do wonder if a head coach will have the exact same amount of autonomy. But like I said, I mean, I think the coaches in Pittsburgh do have a lot of freedom, and that's one part of this job that makes it attractive. I know so many people get hyper focused on the roster present day, but I think head coaches care a lot about how much power they have, reporting structure, stability, those kinds of things matter a lot more than people give them credit for. I think Pittsburgh certainly offers that.
He might be able to say what kind of groceries he wants, but not specific brands, right?
Well, I mean, Rooney still sets the table to kind of stay with your kitchen analogy, or at least he'll give the grocery list of this is what I'm looking for, and then typically the front office and the head coach will go pick the groceries themselves based off of the categories that Rooney wants. So when Rooney wanted to fix the run defense, that was his mandate. He didn't say go draft Derek Carmen. He didn't say we got to go do X, Y, and Z. He didn't say free agency or draft, I assume, but he said fix the run defense, and then it was on Tomlin and Khan and Weidel and company to do that, which meant a very front seven heavy draft. I imagine that will continue.
All right. I think we got Rooney knocked out there.
Yeah, we basically just transcribed the entire thing.
Mhm.
Just you and I. All right, Dave, let's go to these head coaching candidates. We got 3 on the board literally 25 hours after the Tomlin news broke. Now, these are requests, and there's still a little bit of murkiness in terms of when these can take place. I think with Weaver it's going to be easier because he's on a team that's no longer in the postseason. Shula and Shieldhouse are going to be a little bit different. But of those 3, which name kind of piques your attention, Dave?
I think both of the Rams guys obviously do, in Shula and in Shieldhouse, most definitely. There's a nice video up from an ESPN interview on Shieldhouse that I put on my Twitter line earlier today. I think it's a little old, though. I think it might be a year and a half or so old on that. He's a very intriguing guy. I think he's 35 years old. Shula, I mean, we've we've talked about Shula quite a bit, and obviously the family links, and as long as he's been around football, he is 39, I believe, and both those guys obviously come out of the Sean McVay tree, if you will, and we all know the kind of the success that McVay has had. So obviously, I think both of those are very intriguing to start with there, and with their latest one, I mean, it is kind of an obvious one, I guess, too, in Anthony Weaver, knowing his background as well too. So, uh, Am I shocked by any of these names? No. I would imagine Jesse Minter's going to show up at some time. It'll be interesting to see if a guy like Cliff. I listed the other day of, and I know you have an article out this morning that hopefully a lot of people have read about kind of candidates that make sense for the Steelers. I think we share a lot of names in here: Jesse Minter, Chris Shula, Nate Shieldhouse, Cliff Kingsbury. A lot of people roll their nose up already with him because maybe kind of the boldness, and obviously how his stint as a head coach went previously. He would obviously be considered more of a retread, I guess, at this point. Grant Udinsky out of Jacksonville is obviously a name that's being linked in the coach hiring process this time around. I think the Browns and was it the Raiders? Several teams have already, I think, requested a chance to talk to him. Now he is a bit on the younger side, and that's where you kind of wonder about. Even though he's been around football a long time and is a brilliant guy, and Trevor Lawrence even during a presser, talked about the role that Grant Udinsky is played in his maturation and understanding of the position, and how much he's learned from him and all like that. The biggest drawback or only drawback that I can see in researching Udinsky at this point is that he's 30.
How long has he been in the NFL for?
Oh God, what does my bio say up there on him?
It's like 2020 broke in as a coaching assistant in Carolina.
Yeah, let me see if I got pull the bio. I put for all those interested as these guys, or as I think of them at all, I'm pulling their team bios, the PDF form, and then turning them into images. 2019 at Baylor as a graduate assistant, 2020 to 2021 with the Carolina Panthers as a coaching assistant. From 2022, Minnesota Vikings was assistant to the head coach, special projects. In 2023, assistant quarterbacks, chief of special projects with the Minnesota Vikings. 2024 was the assistant offensive coordinator and assistant quarterbacks coach with Minnesota. And then obviously this year was the offensive coordinator for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Was he calling plays in Jacksonville, or was Cohn doing that?
I don't know specifically on that.
Because if you're 30 years old, been in the league for maybe 5 years, never called plays, and again, I'm not getting hyper specific at your head coach. I actually, in a lot of ways, prefer your head coach to not be the play caller in structure, but it just feels pretty early for that.
Udinsky did not call plays with Cohen filling that role for the club. Udinsky has been a fast riser. It doesn't sound like he has called plays yet at any level.
Yeah, it's not about the play calling itself, but just kind of some of the leadership and preparation. I'm sure he's very good at that. He's getting this look at 30 with pretty new to the NFL for a reason. Seems like a really smart guy, hard worker. So I don't want to speak too negatively on it, but
Right.
I have some pause there with kind of those combination of factors.
And then once again, the age factor. Now, look, you can have a 30-year-old act like a 60-year-old like you, or or a 60-year-old act like a 30-year-old, right?
Not sure if that was a compliment or not, but I'll take it.
It's a compliment for you.
All right.
Everything I do with you is a compliment. But though that was just it's an obvious name that's getting looked at from kind of the young guns, if you will.
Yeah, and he's a PA native. I believe that's more on the Philly side of things, from Doylestown, but just to mention that as well. But let's talk about the three guys that they have reportedly put in requests for Shieldhouse. You listen to these insiders. I tweeted about it a couple hours ago before the report came out about the interview that 3 different insiders had done the kind of classic specuporting with Shieldhouse. It was Ian Rappaport called him a wild card in Pittsburgh. Jeremy Fowler, and then Mike Garafolo did earlier on Wednesday. And it usually is one of those, I know something, I can't quite say it for some reason, but I'm going to kind of put it out there to look smarter whenever it does happen. And so Shieldhouse is 35 years old, same age as Mike Tomlin whenever he was hired. Now, he's new in the NFL, 2 years in the league. He's worked his way up, though, a decade ago, football ops at Illinois, really smart guy. Obviously, the McVay tree is attractive, and those guys have a direct pipeline basically from McVay to an NFL head coaching position. So it's kind of been a not-so-sleeper candidate. It's been talked about for a little bit. Peter Schrager's also mentioned Shieldhouse a ton throughout this process. He's gotten some looks from other teams, and a guy certainly who seems like he'll be head coach at some point, maybe this year, maybe in Pittsburgh.
All right, and Anthony Weaver, who the word came down just a little while ago that he's a candidate to get interviewed. Most recently to 2024 present Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator. Before that was with the Ravens, was the assistant head coach and defensive line coach there from 2022 to 2023. In 2021, he was the defensive line coach and run game coordinator for the Ravens. With the Texans in 2020 as a defensive coordinator and defensive line coach. With the Texans in 2016 to 2019 was the defensive line coach. In 2014 to 2015 with the Browns, he was the defensive line coach, and with the Buffalo Bills in 2013, defensive line coach. The Jets, it seems like he broke into the NFL with the Jets in 2012 as the assistant defensive line coach, and then as far as the college and all, graduate assistant at Florida, and was the linebackers coach at North Texas,
where one Mean Joe Green once played and has his jersey retired. Yeah, he knows the AFC North well. He played for Baltimore for a couple of seasons, was an outside linebacker there, coached in Cleveland, coached in Baltimore, he's done a good job, pretty well-regarded guy, a bit older, relatively speaking, but 45, he's 45. It's still pretty darn young. I'm not too worried about the age factor on that. So he's also, I think, gotten some attention throughout this process.
I think he's a name that's been tossed around as getting interviews already.
And then Shula has the Shula name, mentioned him on the Tuesday emergency podcast, recapping the Tomlin resignation. I think that what will be endearing about him, he didn't kind of get this fast track to the NFL. He had to really work his way up. He started out as the, I think, assistant linebackers coach at Ball State and worked his way up. He actually also, and Ross McCorkle's done a good job pointing this out, he spent a year under Steelers quarterbacks coach Tom Arth at John Carroll, where Arth was the head coach and Shula was under him there. Of course, the grandson of Don Shula. There's some connections with Noel, with Kevin Colbert, but I think they'll like how Shula had to kind of really earn his stripes and not just rest on that last name.
Right. And, obviously he's related to, who is it? Who was he with the Bengals?
Don Shula? Oh, I know you're talking about.
Was it David or
I think it was Dave Shula. I think you're right.
Dave Shula, yeah. Dave Shula was the he was the head coach from 92 to 96 and the wide receivers coach with Cincinnati in 1991. Obviously a lot of those Shula boys have spent time around the NFL, and for Shula, that's probably all he's known as ball, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been the DC of the Rams the last 2 years. Over that span, the Rams rank 11th and 7th in sacks and takeaways. So it's been a pretty aggressive defense, and that's something certainly attractive as Pittsburgh. Again, you're looking for the head coach, but you want this defense to kind of get back to standard after a year in which it did disappoint.
And he is 39.
Right, so still in that young category. I'm going to write about this. I'm not quite sure when. Maybe tomorrow, probably a little bit later this week. Days are running together, and I need to kind of do more research on these guys. It's just tough because there's so many people out there, and it takes me hours to kind of go through each name to get a good feel for their background. But I really warmed up to Jeff Hafley, the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator, just kind of his background. He's always intrigued me for a while, but just kind of reading some more on him last night. I hope Pittsburgh takes a look at him. I like that combination of him still being pretty young. He's 46, but experience. He's been a head coach before, not at the NFL level, but at Boston College, and had relative success there. I like that he had to go through the COVID year in 2020, a difficult year for a first-time head coach, of how do you manage difficult circumstances. Seems to be a really good leader. He's a teacher at heart, and I think that's the main goal of a coach, is to teach players, especially a roster that might get pretty young in Pittsburgh pretty quickly. A dozen draft picks coming up in 2026. His mother is a teacher. His sister is a teacher. He's kind of always had that background. And there's some good Pitt ties, too, for him to want to come to Pittsburgh. He coached at Pitt for 5 or so years under Dave Wanstead. He met his wife at Pitt. Her family is from Pittsburgh. And so I think there's some really interesting things with Hafley, but he's a really smart guy. Richard Sherman's talked up Hafley before, so I've kind of gone down the rabbit hole on Hafley, and there's a lot of like.
Yeah, he was a defensive assistant at Pitt 2006 to 2007. He was the defensive backs coach at Pitt from 2008 to 2010 there. And he obviously has been on some NFL coaching staffs. When did Dungy call it quit? When did Dungy leave Tampa Bay?
He wasn't there with Dungy, if that's what you're asking. I don't know. I mean, he got moved over, but Hafley did not work with Dungy side by side.
Who was the head coach in Tampa Bay 2012 to 2013 is an easier question.
All right, 2012, 2013, you said?
Yeah.
That was Greg Schiano, and he was with Hafley at Rutgers.
Right, Rutgers, right.
And Hafley went from Pitt to Rutgers and united with Schiano, and then I think they went to Tampa Bay after that, is the story there.
All right, and who was the head coach in Cleveland 2014 to 2015?
I believe it was Mike Pettin. He just retired, so whatever that's worth, but he has also sung Hafley's praises, but the Browns have had a bunch of head coaches, so let me double check that. It was Mike Pettin.
All right, and the 49ers head coach 2016 to 2018, who was there? He was the defensive backs coach for the 49ers.
He was there for the 1 year of Chip Kelly and then the first year of Kyle Shanahan.
All right, and then Ohio State 2019, he was a co-defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach there before going to Boston College, where you stated he was the head coach.
Yeah, he didn't get fired in San Francisco. Ryan Day basically poached him to leave the NFL to go to college, which was kind of a big risk in a sense, and Hafley was pretty skeptical of that out of the gate, but he did a great job there. Also was regarded as a really strong and top college recruiter, and I know that the NFL is not necessarily recruiting the way that colleges are, but can you connect with players? That's what recruiting is about. And of course, in free agency, can you help convince a player to come to Pittsburgh? Money is the ultimate factor. We all know that, but I just see a really good skill set. And again, what do you need in the head coach? You need a leader, an organizer, a problem solver, a teacher, and I see him as all those things. And I'm sure the other guys are too. I'm sure when I go down rabbit holes on the rest of them, and I have already begun to, then I'll see similar. But I think Hafley's a really attractive candidate.
When you throw names out like this on Twitter specifically, and I'm sure we'll get some feedback on this podcast as well too. People say, well, you throw one name out, you get 6 back, and you get three liking the name that you're throwing out, and 18 that says no.
Sure.
Our job is primarily to build list and much like you did, the ones that probably make the most sense coming out of the chute here, and then digging down further and learning as much as possible what might tend to lead itself to success. And obviously, we'll as another few days go on, we'll probably each get back together on the pod and say, well, which way are you leaning? And our favorites will probably emerge at that point there. And then once the hire's made, then we'll go down all the rabbit holes and look for coaching clinics and playbooks and go over the film and those kind of things there. But anybody that we have not talked about yet that was in your article?
We hit on most of the names. I did want to mention Scotty Montgomery of the Detroit Lions, who's their assistant head coach, and I believe their pass game coordinator. He was in Pittsburgh as the receivers coach 2010 to 2012 with the Young Money crew, Mike Wallace, AB, and Emmanuel Sanders. He also has head coach experience at the college level at East Carolina. Didn't go too well, but he has that in his background. He's worked his way back up to the NFL. Have not heard his name really anywhere this cycle, so I don't know if Pittsburgh would have interest, but you do try to dot connect when it comes to these things, and you see that around the NFL a lot. This guy knows this guy and coached with this guy or played with this guy. Pittsburgh just does not have a lot of that because they're so insular in a sense that Omar Khan's been in Pittsburgh since 2001, and Weidel's a Pittsburgh guy. Now there's some connections you could try to find with Philadelphia. I mentioned that with Mike McCarthy, and Weidel was in Baltimore and New Orleans, and that's where I kind of some of the McCarthy ties as well. But it's kind of there aren't a lot of easy dots to connect in Pittsburgh because they are so just kind of again insular.
All right, let's shift our focus to some of these college coaches that are being discussed. What did Marcus Freeman have to say?
He says he's the head coach at Notre Dame. Now, maybe it wasn't the most forceful denial, and he talked about the benefit of getting some NFL interest. It means, A, that you're doing a good job at the college level, which is good. When an NFL team stopped calling, it probably means you're not doing too hot as a program. But I'll assume he's staying until I'm told otherwise.
All right, Signetti, the other, he's a young 64, is he not?
He really doesn't look 64 if you looked at him, but obviously, I'm sure there won't be much discussion or traction on him until the season is over. Monday night, win or lose against Miami, but odds still seem low. Wouldn't hurt to call him.
I would not. Yeah, he's older than I am. I would not. I would not square off against him.
Oh yeah. I mean, again, you want just a good coach. That is a good coach.
Very good. What are some Dan Lanning? I think people are trying to throw his name in there. Does there seem to be?
What are your thoughts on Randall L? I know Josh Carney has mentioned that. Maybe you tweeted about it the other day.
Brian McFadden mentioned him. I know, and all like that. I mean, what has he really done yet? I mean, obviously,
he's a riser. Ben Johnson took him for a reason.
Right. I mean, he's obviously on some coaching staffs and all like that. Has come up through the ranks. I'm not where I am. He'd be way down the list if I was building a deeper list than the one I already have.
Yeah, I'm a little less enthused. Again, don't believe there's ever been a play caller. Ben Johnson doing that in Chicago. Maybe a little too soon on him, even though he does seem to be a riser. I see some leadership, traits there with Randall L. and obviously the Pittsburgh connection. You could mention some other ex-Steelers, Larry Foote, over there in Tampa Bay. Wouldn't be shocked if he came in for an interview. So another name to consider.
What about retreads? Mike McCarthy, is Ron Rivera looking to get back in this thing? He's been making himself on ESPN and all like that, staying in kind of the forefront. Mike McCarthy, Ron Rivera, Cliff Kingsbury. What about Cliff Kubiak? What are your thoughts on Cliff Kubiak?
I'm sorry, Clint Kubiak, you're saying? Yeah, well, not a retread, but just as an up and comer OC.
Right.
I would expect him to. I'd be surprised if he did not get an interview with Pittsburgh this cycle. It's a little more complicated because, like the Rams guys, the Seattle's gearing up for the divisional round, but obviously he's I think had a bunch of interviews and a ton of requests already. So I think Pittsburgh certainly could be added to that list, and obviously did a great job in Seattle this year.
All right, and Stefanski's out there, obviously.
Yeah, again, there's an endless list of names that you can mention. Stefanski, I don't know if
Flores.
Pittsburgh's going to go for it. Yeah, and we'll see on Flores as well. Yeah, McCarthy, wouldn't be surprised if he got a look there. Yeah, Flores. I like Robert Saleh. I think he's doing a good job. I don't know what the interest is there from Pittsburgh, but that'd be someone I'd be interested in talking to.
What do you think about all that talk about Flores' stint with Miami and kind of kind of viewed as an overly abrasive guy, I guess?
Well, there's the comments that Tua made about Flores that, accused Flores of treating Tua pretty poorly, and it's why they went out and got Mike McDaniel and had a really good relationship with Tua. I don't know what's fact from fiction there. I mean, Flores is obviously a more stern type of head coach, but it was so messy in Miami with old Stephen Ross stuff and all the accusations thrown which way and the other that I can't really make heads and tails. I mean, Flores was in Pittsburgh for a year, so they know what this guy is like. They don't have to kind of guess at his personality and his demeanor. I mean, was Weidl there in the Flores year? Is that 22, 21? What year was Flores in Pittsburgh?
2 years ago, wasn't it?
No, I think it was more than 2 years ago. It was 2022.
3 years ago.
So Weidl was in Pittsburgh then, right? They made that change in the summer of 22.
Okay.
So again, they know.
Tua had characterized Flores as harsh, belittling coaching style, and I just briefly remember things related to that.
Yeah, no, it's worth mentioning, but again, you'd have to talk to Flores, and again, you know him well because he's been in your building for a whole year, so you don't have to kind of guess at the man you're getting. And obviously, Tomlin really vouched for him. And another coaching request, Dave, Jesse Minter. Steelers requesting an interview with the Chargers defensive coordinator. No surprise there. He also knows the AFC North well with a lot of time in Baltimore. Also spent time at Michigan. So a young DC that, again, fits with what Pittsburgh has been hiring over the last 50 years.
All right, several names that we've already rattled off that obviously, as you mentioned, there's already been smoke related to a lot of these guys from uh, from some of the national media guys, and I think it's Tom Pelissero that's reporting this, is it not?
Yes, it was Pelissero that said it on Minter. So we got Minter, Shula, Weaver on the defensive side of things, and Shieldhouse offensively. And again, this list will continue to grow throughout the week. Pittsburgh wasted no time. I
Yeah.
mean, I know Rooney said that they hadn't given much thought about Tomlin's heir and replacement, but maybe they have a little bit. I mean, obviously, you kind of know the pool of names. It doesn't take you a whole lot of time to know who are the top guys and some of the names getting a bunch of buzz. But Pittsburgh is got 4 interviews within 25 hours of Tomlin stepping down.
Right, and I think as we pointed out the other day, even though kind of a little bit late to the party in this, none of the 9 openings have been filled yet. So you know there's you're not behind the 8 ball, so to speak. Yeah, you're throwing your hat in the ring a little bit late here, but you still have a shot at some of these same guys, right?
Yeah, you're behind, but you can catch up really
Right.
quickly. And again, Pittsburgh, I think, is a pretty marquee destination. Now, again, these are just requests. These are not the interview has happened or
Right.
is scheduled. I believe there's a lot of layers to the NFL rules and regulations with head coaches. I think it's still at the virtual interview process, so you don't get the face to face meetings, I think, until after the divisional round, I want to say. That applies for coaches currently on staff and under contract. For those who are free agent coaches like John Harbaugh, you can meet in person. So if you're hearing Harbaugh have a face-to-face meeting, that's because he has been fired and he is no longer under anyone's contract. And so there's no rules on when you can meet with those guys. But for those under contract, like Minter, Shula, etc., there are some restrictions, which I think starts with a virtual interview.
All right, it's good that we held off on this podcast today, right? Get
Absolutely.
to a lot of this breaking news here. All right, what else?
I think that's basically it. We can mention the reserve future contract. We knew one yesterday mid-show. That was Anthony Goodlow, a defensive lineman, and reportedly, according to his agency, so we'll assume it's true, safe to say that Aiden Williams has signed a reserve future contract with Pittsburgh. He was an undrafted free agent out of what small Minnesota school last year? Was that Minnesota Duluth last year in training camp? Felt a little like he needed some sand in his pants. No surprise for a D3 kind of a guy. Was in training camp. I think got released maybe late in training camp or somewhere thereabouts. Maybe
He
briefly on the
started the
practice squad.
season on a practice squad, didn't he? And then wasn't there very long, I don't think.
Yeah, something like that. But he was in training camp. He was through the OTA, undrafted free
Mhm.
agent in Pittsburgh. So he has now made his way back to the team.
All right. Do we want to get a couple emails or no?
Yeah, if we have a couple. Yeah, sure.
All right. And we'll see if anything else news comes. Are you surprised that Dante Moore's going back?
I didn't have great expectations. I guess if you had to ask me before the news, I thought he might have come out because that's kind of way maybe things were going and weaker class and all that kind of stuff. But it's always good when quarterbacks go back for further development, not try to chase a strength or weakness on a class.
The other question I had for you, Art Rooney II only did 15 minutes today. I didn't expect that thing to be very long. I was hoping it would shoot for about 30 minutes or so, but Bert had that thing timed up and ready to cut off about right at 15 minutes. And Art Rooney only really talked about Tomlin and the coaching search being underway and questions mostly related to that. Do you think we're going to get a Rooney annual late January bat signal sit down, talk about the 2025 season and kind of thoughts moving forward, or because of this coaching search and all, we're not going to get any of that at this point?
Well, I sure hope we hear from Rooney again. What I imagine will happen is after the head coaching hire is made, you'll get the Rooney tour sometime a week or two after that to talk about the hire and the excitement. It's a good thing to lead with, and then naturally talk about the offseason that lies ahead. So I think we will still get it because that 15-minute interview was pretty short and just focused really on Tomlin and the coaching search. You really didn't talk about what Rooney usually discusses in terms of charting the offseason course. And so I imagine and hopeful we'll get that this year, but it's probably later than usual after the head coach is in place. Is there more news?
Adam Schefter is reporting that the Steelers have now requested a head coach interview with Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores.
We just got to stay on the podcast, Dave. We just can never leave.
We're going to filibuster.
Seriously.
A potathon. Boy, can you imagine having to listen to my ass for 24 hours?
People will donate us to stop. Usually donate to keep going.
Yeah. A stopathon.
All right. So that's 4 defensive-minded head coaches. Dave's losing his mind over there. So where to Flores, obviously the connections, and not a surprise there.
Yeah, maybe we should try that. We'd probably raise a whole hell of a lot of money. Please put a goal of something like $100,000. If we reach that, we'll stop, and Dave will take a vacation. I don't know if I'm going to get any vacation this off season at this point.
Not for a while, at least. We got a lot going on right now.
We got a lot going on. Might run over to San Diego or something for a day or two, but that's about it. All right, let's get to some listener emails. Cameron Bobbeth writes in, Dave and Alex, love the podcast and site. With a new head coach, do you think it is likely that the Steelers move on from DK with the removal of some of the guaranteed money with his recent incident? With a cap hit of $31 million in 2026, fourth highest APY for wide receiver according over the cap, and 32nd ranked wide receiver on PFF. He says, I like DK, but not at the cost. I'm curious what you guys think. Thanks and keep up the great work. P.S. We as fans love to know what you would do, even if you don't think it is likely the Steelers are going to do it. We appreciate your insight. We try to mix in a lot of that. A lot of times, though, we think why some of our own personal thoughts. Sometimes at time, we're probably each kind of convinced that the Steelers won't go that route, and thus we don't go hard and heavy, but we'll try to mix in more of what we would do, especially during this head coach search and along those lines there. That we still don't have really hard clarity on the whole DK Metcalf removal of guaranteed money. I'm still trying to get Joel Corey lined up for a podcast so we can go over like 8 or 9 different things that are weighing on us right now. One of those things obviously just got added to the list in Mike Tomlin's contract. There's some questions I have about the whole option bonus thing with Jalen Ramsey that I'm not 100% kind of clear on. Several other little things. I think it'd be interesting too to see how much people see these players, even these rookies, get what, $900,000. How much is generally an agent's take on that? People think that those guys are rolling in it, but after taxes and agent and travel, and how much are those guys down to? I just think that'd be an interesting discussion of how much it costs to be a first year player or a rookie, so to speak. Just several of the questions in my mind. So we don't have a firm, but I mean let's assume that DK, which some of the reporting out there has been that, they're gonna essentially stick with his guaranteed money. If indeed that's the case, he's not going to go. He's not going anywhere this season. It's hard to imagine that happening unless he has another incident or something like that, right? I mean, first and foremost, I guess we need to look at, could a new head? I couldn't imagine any new head coach or offense coordinator coming in and saying, I just can't use that guy.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. DK is going to be a Steeler in 2026 and probably beyond. I mean, part of the interview process is not just getting to know the coach himself in terms of how he works and his background and overall philosophy, but it's what Rooney discussed. It's how do you see this roster? What changes would you make? What do you like? What you don't like? Strengths, weaknesses. What is your coaching staff? These guys will bring in. They'll have books and say, here's my coaching staff. Here's my top 4 options for OC, for DC, for every position coach, special teams coordinator, etc. That's part of the process. And so when you make the hire, you should have a good understanding of how this guy feels about your roster. It's not just hire the guy and then, okay, what do you want to do with the roster now? This is all part of the interview process. You have a guy that you hire that aligns with your vision of that roster. And, I imagine all those guys will sit there and say, yes, I want to keep DK, keep my top receiver, and be a playmaker in 2026.
Thank you for that email. Ian Bussot writes in, "Hi guys, great job as always. I was happy to get to listen to the bonus edition yesterday. Thanks. Time for a little speculation and crystal ball gazing. Do you really believe that Mike Tomlin went into Rooney's office and said, 'Surprise, you need to find a new coach. So long and thanks for all the fish'? My speculation," he says, "a playoff win was a minimum requirement for the year. Tomlin was given his wish list of a few big name players from what was available, and it was agreed that he would step down if he couldn't meet the minimum requirement. Or Tomlin was planning on stepping down after the end of the year, and they tried to send him out on a high note by giving all the talent that they could. Because I really hope they didn't start their coaching search yesterday," he writes. "Thanks, guys. Have a great day. P.S. This offseason just got a lot more exciting for the first time in a long time." Ian, I know you sent this before. You sent this 5 hours ago. Obviously, the Art Rooney press conference has taken place. I take Art at his word for everything that he said. I think I he referenced back to Mike saying at one time that I'm closer to than the end of my coaching career than the beginning, as sort of a hint that something could happen sooner rather than later. But I don't. Art came right out and said he wasn't expecting the direction of the meeting yesterday to take the direction that it took, and I believe him.
Yeah, I do too. Now, again, you do see this team act really quickly on the head coaching search. So that, I wonder if there was some at least inkling or some sort of background. Maybe it was Omar Khan in the background, Andy White in the background. I don't know who, kind of just thinking about who that next coach could be, or at least keeping their finger on the pulse of it all. But yeah, I don't. I think it's just how it's presented. That Tomlin made the decision on his own volition to walk away, and that's that.
All right, let me get to one more here from Andrew Parrish. "Hello, Dave and Alex. Hope all is well from over here in West Virginia. We will all hold the last 19 years in Tomlin's tenure near and dear to our hearts. But my question is, with all the questions about the rest of the coaching staff, Tomlin did keep the staff when he took the job, but I believe he obtained a better team. My question is Mike Tomlin leaving a better or worse team than he got when he took over the job after Bill Cowher?"
I'd have to look at the roster. It's probably a worse team that was a Super Bowl winning roster 2 years after, you know, uh,
Cowher.
yeah, 2 years ago when Tomlin took the job. So it probably was a better roster then than it is present day, in part because you had your franchise quarterback, and you don't have that right now. So that's an obvious difference. But, it doesn't mean I don't take away much from that answer. I mean, it's 20 years ago. So what can you do with that information? I'm not quite sure.
And what Cowher's final year, what was the record that year? Uh
Didn't they go 8-8?
8-8. Yep. 8-8.
They won that last game to hit 500. One other just quick point, and I know that obviously we talk about the attractiveness of
Taking my watch off.
we talk about the attractiveness. You are in a good mood today. You talk about the attractiveness of a job, and the quarterback element is part of it. But and I know obviously you'd rather have a franchise quarterback, a Drake May for Rabel, Trevor Lawrence for Liam Cohn. But there's value in not having a quarterback and just having a clean slate. You see so many coaches kind of get put in these shotgun marriages with quarterbacks. I think about Jonathan Gannon and Kyler Murray, where it's, well, here's the quarterback, whether you like him or not, he's the quarterback, so go make it work. And oftentimes it doesn't quite feel like the head coach ever gets a fair shake to go get his quarterback. In Pittsburgh, you will have the chance to go get your quarterback. Will that be this year for the long-term guy? We'll see exactly where this road turns. It's looking pretty narrow right now. But I think there's something to be said about not being saddled with this quarterback that you have to kind of make work, and the chance to go get your guy at some point.
Rob, we'll take one more. I lied. Rob Jones. "Hi, gents. My bet is Tomlin will be a weekly special guest coach on the Pat McAfee show. That way he stays in the spotlight, but only doing TV one time a week for 30 minutes. We'll miss him being the Steelers head coach for sure. Do you think he's going to show up on Pat McAfee any?"
Yeah, he could. I mean, he's been on there before. They've had a bunch of former coaches on. Chuck Pagano, who's now with the Colts. I think Ravens, excuse me. So we'll see if they fill that. BA, bunch of guys on there. McAfee, I'm pretty sure pays those guys for their time too. So it's a chance for Tomlin to make a little bit of money on this side. Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, I think Fox Sports is the reported favorite, which kind of makes sense. I think to replace Jimmy Johnson, Buddy Jay Glazer is there. I think a desk with Tomlin and Bradshaw would be interesting for television, that's for sure. CBS apparently is going to give Kirk Cousins a try on the studio desk, maybe replace Matt Ryan. So maybe CBS won't be the option for Tomlin, but who knows? I mean, I don't have a whole lot of guesses on where that's going to end up.
All right, we're about an hour and a half here, and all this coaching stuff in. We got to get back to working, doing some stuff on the site here today. Alex and I will be back at it, barring something major happening on Friday, right?
Yep, be back on Friday.
All right. If we didn't get to your email and it's still relevant after all that's happened in the last couple of days, resend it or bump it up or what have you. We'll try to get to it on the Friday show. We'll look ahead at the divisional round matchups and go over any other news that's happened. I think probably here in an hour and a half, we'll probably have even more reserve future guys to talk about being signed to the roster. To start putting together some initial salary cap stuff. We can talk more about free agents and all. We went down that long list the other day there. So there's going to be obviously plenty to talk about moving forward. And do you know who Walter Cronkite was, Alex?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'll make a Rogers Society crumbling comment for those who don't. The CBS newscaster. I've listened back to the old JFK assassination stuff when Cronkite broke the news of his death, and so yeah, I know Walter Cronkite. What's up?
You know what? Yeah, I'm signing off here. You know how he used to sign off the CBS Evening News, right?
I forget exactly. He had a tagline, but hit me with it.
And that's the way it is. January 14th, 2026. I'm Dave Bryan, Steelers Depot at Steelers Depot. Alex Kozora at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the show, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. Get a username and password and log in to take advantage of the ad-free version of the site. Alex and I will be back on Friday. So, had fun today, Alex. We'll do this again on Friday. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.